Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me. This is going to be a 3D tutorial on how to remix your geometry. Now, this is not a tutorial for people who already know 3D, like Maya, Max, Blender, CAD, what have you. If you already know 3D programs, then this is definitely not the video for you. This is for people who literally know nothing about 3D. So I'll be going over using Blender. Now, I know some will say what programs to use is better than the others. I'm using Blender because I know Blender and it's what I use in my day job. So that's the program I'm going to be using. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so when you open Blender for the first time, this is pretty much what you get a splash screen and a bunch of other stuff down here you really don't need to deal with. Just click on the background and that splash screen goes away. For what we need it for, and again, I'm only teaching you what you need it for remixing something. Okay, there's a lot of things that you need to learn about it, but again, we're not going to go over it. We're just going to learn what we need to know. Let's start by talking about how to navigate your GUI. Your middle mouse button is your friend. Okay, so middle mouse button allows you to rotate around like the matrix, bullet time, all right, to orbit around. Shift and mouse button allows you to pan. And that's pretty much all you need. Your middle scroll button, zoom in, zoom out. Okay, now suppose we can play Let's Pretend you've scrolled out so far and rotated it around so many times, you have no idea where your object is. Well, if you come over here and select your object, like that, and it's selected, hit the period key on your keypad, and you'll go right to it, all right? And it'll frame it up in the center, and you'll rotate around that object. Now this is really good because if you have multiple objects in here, all right, I'll show you how to duplicate in a minute. And you want to rotate around this object over here. The period key zooms in, and now you're rotating around that object. All right, so, okay. Next thing you want to learn is the viewing of your display. So as you can see, we are in what's called shaded mode or textured mode, all right, or whatever you want to, whatever other programs call it, but Blender is called texture mode. All right, there's the X-ray mode or the wireframe mode, and you can turn this X-ray mode on and off by clicking this button. So these three buttons up here are your primary buttons you'll be using for your modifications or your remixing. All right, so you can actually have the X-ray on in either wire or shaded mode. So there we are. We are in X-ray. You can kind of faintly see that back end in here. But you'll mostly use the X-ray mode for your wire mode, like this. Okay, so those are your modes. How to view top, bottom, right, center, all that good stuff. So your keypad's your friend on this. Number 1 will give you front, number 3 will give you side, and number 7 will give you top. Now if you forget those numbers, all right, there's an easier way to do it through the GUI. That's a little star gizmo up here, right? It's navigation gizmo. So if you click on Z top, it'll take you to the top, front, and side. And you can go underneath, left, and back. All right? So those are your navigations. Also, one thing that I really wish would be on by default, but it isn't, is if you hit the letter N for Nancy, you get this information. This is very important. It shows placement of your object. So if I grab it, move it, which I'll show you how to grab in a minute. All right. It shows you exactly where it's at. All right. You can move things numerically as well, or rotate things exactly, 45 degrees. All right. So there's that. Now, how do you actually grab stuff in Blender? Let's go back to the sheet. All right. So the grabbing stuff, whether it be points, edges, or objects, is all the same. So once you learn one, you know it all. It's G for grab. Okay, so I'm grabbing this object. Now how am I keeping this on this line? Well, you can do it in one of two ways. One, you can hit G for grab, and then the corresponding axis. That green line is Y. So I hit the letter Y, it highlights, and you don't even need to hold down the mouse button. You just move your mouse, okay? And if you forget which one's which, just look up here. Green corresponds to this direction, red corresponds to this direction, and obviously Z goes up and down. So if I hit G for grab and the X button, I can go this way. Now the other way to do it is use your middle mouse button and start to drag in a general direction. So if I want to go on X, grab the G button for grab, hold down my middle mouse button and start dragging. And as soon as it highlights that line, you can let go of your mouse button and just drag your mouse. Okay? Same thing with the Y. All right? So once that's highlighted, you can let go of your mouse button and just drag from now into infinity. Same thing with Z, G, go up. There we go. So there's that. All right, edit mode, which is the tab key. All right, tab key. As you can see, you get this new little menu right here. And this changes as well. But you'll be concerned mostly with this. So you get your points or your vertices. And again, just like with grabbing anything, G, and you can grab and move it accordingly. Now, if you don't constrain, it will move according to your view. All right. So, oops. So, there we go. And you click to let go of the grab. And as you can see, it's not very accurate if you're not constraining onto an axis. Okay. So let's go ahead and put that back. This line icon is for your edges. Okay. Edges, yay. And this square block is obviously for faces. Okay. So that's edit mode. We will be using edit mode in this tutorial. So don't worry if that was a little too fast, we'll come back to it. Okay. Next thing is, what else? Oh, these over here. Again, as I said, these basically tell you information about your outputs. Okay, if you scaled it or whatever. If you need to change this all back, you can click and drag, and it selects all of them. And whatever number you put in, it'll put in to all the boxes. All right, that's pretty much it. If I think of anything else, we'll mark it as we go. But for navigating and using your viewers and your GUI and moving stuff around, that should be it. Now, by default, you get a camera and a light. For our purposes, we do not need these because we are remixing geo and spitting it out as an STL. All right. So let's go ahead and start with importing a model. Because import STL. Okay, if you do not have STL as an import, most likely it's not turned on. So if you come over here to Preferences, Add-on, and just type in STL, make sure this is clicked on. What I love about Blender is you do not need to restart. Once you've clicked that on, it stays on forever, and you don't need to restart the app unlike other programs. You need to restart your preferences before they take effect. So, import STL. Let's go with standard rail. All right. So for those of you who are part of the StageTop family, we're making our own gaming tables. This is right up your alley. Just go with the standard rail. All right. Zoom out, and there's our beautiful rail. Woohoo. Okay. All right, so let's start by remixing it and building, chopping the top off, making a lid, carving out the center so we can put game pieces in. All right. So Shift A, all right, gives us a nice cube. All right, and hit S for scale, which makes sense. Now, when I'm using cutting objects for cutting, what I like to do is change their viewing. All right. So if you come over to this little bitty square right here, go down to Viewport Display. I'll switch that to Wired. Okay. So it tells me two things. One, I'm using this as a cutting object. All right, this is only for my own personal benefit. This isn't required. Is one, I'm using this for a cutting object, and two, I still get to see the object that I will be cutting, which is my standard rail. So let's go ahead and go to wire view and go to X-ray, get another one, and I want to encompass everything, and I want to chop from this ledge from there up to make it a lid. So we're just going to use our command keys to move it in place. G for grab, S for scale. I'm going to go on the X axis, which is that red line, and encompass the whole thing. All right, let's see what else. I'm going to go ahead and move it up. No, it's not big enough, so scale at Z, go up and down, make it big enough. Grab key or G key, move it down, and then navigate over here so I can match this level as much as I can. So grab key, Z key, so I can move it straight up without worry. Try to line that up. That's good enough for government. All right, let's take a look at the side angle. Oh, we're way off. So again, G key and Y key, and over, S key for scale, Y key. And again, we want to encompass the whole rail system or this object, our geo. All right, let's go ahead and name this as cut object. Cut half. All right, and we're going to name this a lid, because that's what we're going to make. We're going to make a lid. Now, your most powerful tool in remixing is the boolean. In Maya and 3D Studio Max, it's called the same thing. I believe, I'm not sure if it's called the same thing in various CAD programs, but in Blender, it's called boolean. What's this going to do is basically say, oops, wrong object. You got to be on the object that you want to boolean. So, boolean, and then you select the object that you're going to cut out with or interact with, which would be this. Now, by default, it's difference because that's what you use 90% of the time. It's different. So, whatever's the difference is between this object and this object, it will keep. Okay? So, there we go. We got ourselves a lid. So let's go back to shaded format, and there we are. Now we need the bottom. So, let's go ahead and dupe the bottom. Shift D duplicates. Do not move this around. Whatever you do, try not to move that around. Okay? Let's go ahead and delete this again. So, Shift D and then click on your mouse. All right? Try to keep it in the same spot, otherwise it won't line up. So let's go ahead and name this to B. Bottom. Now, why am I naming it A and B? It's because this list is arbitrary. It doesn't matter what order it is, what is in front of what. It's not like a compositing program. It doesn't care. If it's in this list, it's in your scene. So therefore, I'm labeling it like this so I keep the things that I want to keep together at the top, and anything that I don't want to keep at the bottom with no lettering to it. Okay? And again, that's all preference and organization. That's completely up to you. So let's go ahead and select our bottom. We already got our cut half in there, but this time we want to intersect. Okay, so anything that's intersecting between this object and this object, it'll keep. So in this case, anything inside the box, inside the cut box. All right, there we go. So now we have a bottom half, and we're done. No, just kidding. We still gotta channel this bad boy out so we can put game pieces in there. So what do? Let's go ahead. We can either do one of two things. We can hit Shift A, make a new box, okay, and then set its parameters to wired, so we know it's a cutting object, or, which I'm deleting, we can just go ahead and take an object we've already set up parameters for, which is this, and Shift D, and then we can move this wherever we want, okay? So, there we go. And we'll go ahead and name this inside. Cut inside. There we go. So that way we know that's that. Let's go ahead and turn off our cut half box. That way we don't get confused on which one we're getting. And now we go to the process of sizing it to where we need it. All right, so let's go ahead and move this up. Obviously, we don't want this piece here because that's our locking mechanism for our gaming table. So we're vertically correct. And that, all right. This time we want to stay within these pillars here because this is the locking mechanisms for the rails to each other. So we want to go ahead and bring this in. Well, now we're going to go to edit mode, which is the tab key. All right. And this is where you want to make sure you're in X-ray mode. So when you click on something, you select everything. You need to select. Let's go to our vertices, which is our points. Grab them. We'll make sure we're grabbing both, which we are. Okay. Just double checking. All right. Grab X and move that over here. Okay. Same thing with this. Grab G, X, move it over here. All right. Let's give it a little bit more room there. All right. Go to the front here. All right. You can also do it this way. We can grab all of them and scale. This time we're going to do Y because that's the green line. Y. And then scoot it in. So as you can see, we're not even, so we're going to do it separately. Move it into place. All right, there we go. So if you look at this, I think that might be right. Let's find out. Let's pay the piper here. So we grab our object we want to cut, go back to our booleans, our modifier. Some people call this a wrench, some call people this a spanner, but it's the modify button. Here's our old boolean, which we'll go ahead and keep in there. Go ahead and add another one right here. All right, we can either select it in the drop down inside, okay, or we can use the eyedropper to select it as well. So two different ways of selecting your cut. Hey, look at that. Uh-oh, look at this. I pushed it down too far. We're seeing straight through. Now, experienced 3D users will be like, well, why don't you do loop cuts and just trim it in, which I'll show you an example at the end of this video on why I don't do it this way. So I want to grab my box, G, I'm going to go up on the Z, so I'm moving up and down, and I'm just going to kind of fix that edge and make sure there's no holes in our box. And there is not. Yay. There we are. Okay. So that's looking cool. We're done, right? Let's put our lid on and we're done, right? Yeah? No, we're not, because we need a way for this lid to stay on there, because if we put it on right now as it stands, it'll just slide off. So let's put a lip on here to cut a groove in the upper part of this lip so it has something to latch onto. All right, this is where basic industrial design comes in. All right, so let's grab, what we need is to take this wall, extend it up just a little to create a lip, just the wall, not the thickness of the wall. But we already have a box that matches that description. So let's go ahead and duplicate this bad boy and name this C lip. All right, I give it a letter because I know it's something we want to keep. You also want to make sure we put this back to textured, and we're going to go ahead and hide the cut inside because we don't need that, and I don't want to accidentally grab it while I'm messing around with my lip. All right, so we only need the walls. We don't need the top and the bottom. So let's go ahead and hide our rail system here. Go back to edit mode, which is the tab key. Select our face there, face there, shift, click, allows you to select multiple things, and the X when you get rid of it, and it's a face. Booyah, there we go. All right, we're not done yet. We still got to measure it, because obviously that's way too high. Sorry about that. That is way too high for our lid. So let's go ahead and put front view, back to wire mode, and X-ray mode. Oh, it was already on. All right, and go to vertex mode, grab Z, and move down. Okay, so there we have it. So we can go ahead and turn that off for now, and go back to our view mode. All right, next thing we do, this is why having this in controller is important. So as you can see, we have a scale here. As you see, we have a scale here. We need this to be set to 1, but if we set these to 1, it's just going back to the regular box. So we need to reset this and make this become 1 as is. It's like resetting a scale when you're measuring food or what have you. You want to zero out the bowl. So come up here to Objects, Apply. You can do Scale, Rotation, and Location. I just go ahead and do it all because I'm just lazy that way. So now we're at 1. And this is very important. Now we can come over here to our spanner or wrench, aka the Modify tab, and create a solidify. All right. And I believe for my 1.4 nozzle, this needs to be 1.8 to make it 2 walls. I've tried just doing 1 wall on this gag, and that breaks. Okay, so 2 walls minimum. I believe it's 1.8. Your machine might be different, so I would do a lot of experimental test prints on what Blender sees as 2 walls. All right. Now this is also a point where maybe a proper CAD program would actually be better. But again, I know this. I've done this enough. So, all right. So now that we have a wall, let's go ahead and turn our bottom back on. And look at that. We have a lip. All right. But now we need to cut it out from this so that we have that lip can go up inside there and lock everything into place. So let's go ahead and turn everything off except for our lip. And because it already has thickness that we want, let's go ahead and, again, Shift D, click so it doesn't go anywhere. And then we'll be using this as a cut. So we'll go cut top. All right. And turn off, make it white. All right. So for now, we're going to go ahead and leave this off, the lip. All right. And then we're going to use turn on our lid. And again, as you can see, this is all repetition. Select your object, go to your modifier tab, grab another Boolean, and then go ahead and cut that object out, and then look at that, we have a tab or a slot for that lip to go into. Now, something you definitely want to be aware of, let's go ahead and turn that back on. Go to wireframe and turn our lip back on. So you see the lip, but I want to be in wireframe, and I want to make sure I'm using my cut top selected. So try not to get too confused. Here's my top view. You got to consider tolerance. Now, this is definitely something very independent on the 3D printer. I kind of know what mine is, so I don't really have to worry too much about it, but you do need to create a gap between your cut and your actual lip wall. So this is all for tolerance of the 3D printer. So I'm going to go ahead and I roughly know what it is. Mine is, so there's a little bit on the outside there, and then make this a little bit bigger. All right, so my channel that I am cutting is just ever so slightly bigger than the actual lip of the bottom piece. So it snaps onto place fairly snug. So as you can see, it's not much. It's like one little square or half a square. All right, but I know the tolerance enough on my 3D printer to know what it should be roughly. So now, go ahead and turn all this stuff back on, go to viewing mode. There we go. And there we go. We have totally remixed this file. All right, so now let's put some detail in. Now the rest of this is completely optional. You can quit the video if you want, go do your own thing. I'm going to put a groove in here so I can put little divider slits in there. We're going to learn something new about that as well. So, because we're doing something new, go ahead and just create a new box. Mesh, Shift A for my assets, and create a new cube. All right, and we're going to go ahead and turn this back to wireframe. So let's go to our side view this time. All right, I'm going to move this in here, and I'm going to go ahead and go into edit mode because it's going to be easier to do. And I'm moving it up here. So when you look at it, we have this. All right, so that looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and go our front view and extend this. All right, and we can go over a little because this is part of the geo that we're keeping. So let's go ahead and Alright, and our tab key, select our faces, go ahead and hit letter A for all, duplicate and move that bad boy over here. So now that we have two walls. There we go. Now let's put the slits in. Next is, let's add another cube in here. If you haven't figured this out yet, you'll see that everything we're doing is using very, very basic cubes, spheres, and the like. It's nothing complex, nothing at all. Oh, that's way too big. All right, so let's do some shrinkage here. Edit mode, which are vertices. Matter up here, over here is what we're going to do. X. All right. A little bit of a user tip. This little center point when you're scaling or rotating or moving actually matters. If you're trying to scale and your mouse starts right here, you'll find that scaling is it's jumpy. It's too sensitive. But if you start with the mouse way out here and hit S, you can get a much finer detail of scaling, moving, or rotation. So S, X. This far. There we go. There we go. So we're going to be using that to cut everything out. A new tool to look at is the array, which is a modifier, array. And then we can add as many as we want. That way we know they are exactly the same distance. There we go. All right, so this is cut. Oops. Cut dividers. There we go. Turn that to wire. And again, let's do our Boolean routine. Select our side paneling, and our modifiers, and a Boolean. Very repetition. I know, but that's how you learn. And look at that, we got dividers for our object. All right, now, because we already have this sized up, let's just go ahead and duplicate this. All right, we'll call this the E dividers. There we go. We don't need this anymore, we just need the one. Let's go ahead and hide our cut dividers. And now we gotta make sure, again, with our tolerance levels, that this will fit in our dividers. Bottom, make sure we're not hitting the walls our device, which we are. Turn this back to shading. There we go. So we got to make sure we can slip that in there. It's a small print, so if we have to change it, it's not that big a deal of fixing. So there we go. So I just need to print however many of these I want, and we have our new item. And with that, I think we are done with our modification. Nope, we are not. I forgot one more thing. This goes to our gaming table. When I built this initially, I found that I had issues pulling it off sometimes. I didn't have any grip, if you will. So what we're going to do is go ahead and add a grip. Oops, did I accidentally do that? I did. Shift V. Have ourselves another cube. Imagine that, another bloody cube. Right. Now I need this flush with the bottom, so I'm going to use the same half cutout that I did with the lid in the box, so that I know it's flush at the bottom. As you can see, why I use keyboard commands a lot for my maneuvering, because it's a lot quicker than constantly going up to the top left hand and selecting your whatever modification you need. Turn that off. So turn off these guys for a moment. Speed up. It's just so we can see what we're doing. Alright. So we gotta trim that little bad boy off. Again, here we go again with the Boolean. The Boolean is the most powerful tool in your arsenal. Cut half. There we go. So I know that's flush, and so it's not such a sharp corner. Let's go ahead and bevel the edges a bit, just a bit. There we go. Maybe a little bit more roundness. Okay, so I don't want roundness at the bottom. I want that flush. So let's go ahead and bevel it first, then do the cut. So this layer ordering here does actually matter. All right, so we'll call this F lid grip. All right, now I think we are done with our piece. And on all of our lettered items, just to make sure. Okay, that looks good. That looks good. So let's group this also so we can keep things even more organized. So I'm going to select and drag all those, hit the letter M, create a new collection, call it bottom. Alright, so now I can just turn off bottom, and it turns everything that needs to be off. So the same thing with lid and lid grip. Letter M is in Mary. New lid. Alright. There we go. And E dividers here, it'll kind of be its own separate thing. Alright. So there we go. There you have it. Now, before you go rushing out printing this, let's do. We really need to do test prints on this. So let me show you how to do a test print on this. So to export this, you select your objects, File, Export, STL, and then save it to wherever you want to save it to. Same thing with this. Select all, File, Export, STL. One thing I forgot to mention on the last is this. Make sure this is selected. All right, otherwise you end up saving everything, even all these hidden stuff. You'll save out. You don't want to do that. Just what you've selected only. Okay, save that to where you want. and then use your slicing program of choice. Okay, so the reason why I don't use loop cuts, and I said I'd mention this, and I'll show you right now the reason why I don't use loop cuts. Let's go ahead and create a generic box real quick. All right, we're going to pretend that this is our railing system that we have, right? And we want to cut that little hole at the top. All right, so we go to edit mode, Control I, and then extrude down. Okay, so yes, we accomplished the same result. All right, but the problem is now I've killed this object. It's what I call dead. If I want to change it, let's say I wanted to have a totally different inside here, I'd have to pretty much start over. With the Boolean technique, I can just either delete my Boolean object, the invisible square that we had to cut the center out, or change it up as needed, and I can do it on the fly. With this technique, I've cut the object and basically destroyed any chances of editing it back to its original or starting from a nice fresh start. So that's the reason why I don't like using loop cuts or anything like that, trying to destroy the mesh of any kind. I like to keep things editable and my options open. Okay, so here we are in Cura. Now before you go rushing out to print this, you want to make sure that the lid actually fits on top and you got your tolerances right. Okay, the inside here, the tolerance of the dividers, a lot less important because printing up those little divider chips is a lot less expensive time than printing up this whole thing. So before you print this up, I'd recommend you take this bad boy, shove it down into the ground like this, ish, sorta, and just print this out like as you see here, just to test fit your pieces. And if you do need to change anything, I would recommend changing the cut piece here that cuts out this trim versus trying to redo your entire lip or anything like that. Because if you go back to Blender, the only thing you have to deal with is that on the lid would be cut top. That's it. That's the only thing you have to deal with. If you try changing everything with the lid or the lip or anything like that, that means you have to go back and change a lot of things. With just changing this cut lid here, then you're only changing the one thing, reprinting, and you only need to reprint the lid too. So after this, so that's my recommendation for testing this before you print the whole big enchilada. So there you have it. That's pretty much it. As you can see, it was very repetitious of the techniques I did. The Boolean, making sure your Booleans are selected properly, and things like that. What you can do is practice with the Booleans is just create a simple cube, sphere, make them connect to each other or intersect, and then test out the Booleans. You'll get the hang of it real quick, trust me. All right, so Booleans, knowing how to navigate and manipulate your geo, that's really it. Those are the three things I use. And as you can see, I was just using squares. Nothing, I wasn't modeling anything. I wasn't doing anything extravagant. I was just using squares. Okay, remixing is pretty simple. Once you get the hang of it, get more and more techniques under your belt, and you can get more advanced stuff, and eventually start making your own creations from the get-go. So there you have it. That's my tutorial. I'm sorry it was a bit long. It kind of had to be. So have a good day, and I'll see you next time.